What going on, guys, Commander here, and welcome to a new video inside of Substance Painter. Now, what I'm going to be showing you today is how to make a undersuit of a clone trooper or stormtrooper that you see in the movies, the Star Wars prequel movies, and much like you see in my renders that I post up on Instagram. Now, the reason why I'm showing you, doing a tutorial on how to do this is because when I made the decision of doing these texturing things that make him look a bit more like the live action counterparts with the undersuits, after I learned how to do it, it's like, there's no tutorials on YouTube of how to do it. It's actually quite a crucial effect for doing like clone trooper renders and clone trooper texturings. But you can't find anything on YouTube about how to do it. And I think it really brings to life the realism of doing clone trooper renders. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing it on this TK trooper, my own custom model, by the way. And there's a reason why I'm doing it on my own custom model. It's because the way the ambient occlusion works on the underbody works perfectly for what I'm trying to do. And I'll show you what I mean in a second. There's two ways of doing this, right? An easy way and a not so easy way. I wouldn't say it's difficult, but you've got to pay attention, because if you don't do it the exact same way that I'm doing it, you can get lost quite quickly. It's not going to work. The first way you can do it is by using just a blank material. Now, this is an easier way to do it, but to me, personally, it doesn't look that great. But first, what I'm going to do, I'm going to bake the ambient occlusion for my base body material set, texture set, right? Now, the reason why I'm doing this is because the way ambient occlusion works is it makes shadows around the joints of your model, right, to give it a bit of like a shadowy effect. That's not the reason why I'm doing it for this model. The reason why I'm doing it is because when you get into doing it, like painting over the different areas with the texture that we're going to set up, differences in the shadow between the light and the dark parts actually show you perfectly where the gaps in the armor, where that texture is going to show. And I will show you what I mean in a second. I just bake this ambient occlusion texture. It shouldn't take too long. There we go, that's done. Now if we go back into the paint thing, you can see here on my body, you can see the different shadows. Now all these light bits are all the different breaks in the armor. So everything that's dark is covered by armor, so like the chest piece and the crotch area and the legs and that. Everything that's light is all these gaps in the armor, like around the shoulder place, the elbow, and the top of the leg around the crotch area. That's where all these light parts are. Now that's good, because when we come to actually painting out our mask for the different areas, and it'll be crucial, I'll show you why it's crucial, we know exactly where to paint. Instead of going through and just sort of painting on this bit where we can't see every like little detail, doing it on a flat UV map is so much easier, right? So that's the first bit. Second bit is you need to create a fill layer. I think it's a fill layer, and go to material node and type in scarf, right? And you should have scarf wall, right? Click that and it should apply just like that. Now, what you need to do is you need to set your tiling to something absurd. So let's say 20, right? That's not particularly absurd. So it might be a bit less, it might be a bit more. Now, if you don't see an effect that looks like this, one or two things could have happened, right? Is that your tiling is too high or too low, right? So if I set the tiling to, let's say, 500, which is a ridiculously high tiling number, you can't hardly see it. If you zoom in, you can sort of see it, but for better or for worse, the effect isn't there or it doesn't work properly, right? So that's your tiling being too high. If your tiling is too low, so as I said to the 5, you can sort of see it, but not that great, right? But if I said to, let's say, 2, it just doesn't look proper at all. So if you're, and this tip about this tiling thing is going to come in a crucial hand later on. Set it to something like 20 and maybe increase or decrease the dependent, right? So automatically you can sort of see the stripe effect flowing through the model, right? Flowing through this mesh. Now what you can then do is you can then go and change the color to a bit of like a black, and then you've got a fabric sort of material, right? So now I'm going to show you the reason why you need the ambient occlusion, right? So if you look here, because they're all pointing in one direction, so it goes down the arms perfectly fine, but going down the legs, it points horizontal instead of diagonal. Landscape instead of portrait, we'll go with that, right? It's going across instead of up and down like the arms are, right? So it should be going up and down the legs like it is on the arms, right? But it's not. So how do we fix that? Right, well, there's an easy way of fixing it. You go if we duplicate this by going Control-C, Control-V, right-click and add black mask, and then what we need to do is set, let's get rid of this one, and we need to set the rotation of this one to 90, right, 90 degrees. So that way, so if I get rid of the mask on this one, you can now see that that's going downwards as it should be, but on the arm, it's going across ways, right? So you can see it's not pointing in the right direction. Same with up here, right? Now, easy way to sort that. So now what you do is you go add a black mask, and then what you do, if you go into your polygon fill, you can see all the polygons and or squares or whatever it might be, and then just highlight and go over the light areas, right? It doesn't have to be particularly clean because everything that's darker is covered by the armor, right? If I turn off everything except for the body, you can see it looks a bit of a mess. But if I turn the armor back on, you can't see it, so it doesn't really matter. Not anything too particularly fancy, and I might go up on around the shoulders a little bit like this. So now we've got it going downwards on around the chest area and on the legs. So now what we can do, if we turn this layer back on, what you might notice is on the parts of the top layer which you just masked off, is now crisscrossing. Right, it looks fine on the arms because you haven't done over that, but around the legs it's now crisscrossing, right? Now the way to fix that is if you go and black mask that layer off, go back to the top layer, right click, copy mask, go down to this bottom layer, paste into mask, and then right click and go invert mask. What that then does is it actually flips the channel over. Right, so now what we've got is we've got this going downwards on the arm, this going crossways on the arm, and this down here going downwards as what it should look like, right? It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, because if you look at some of the renders that I've got, there's a seam on the shoulder, so around this area here, right? So you could be a little bit more specific with it if you want to, but for better or for worse, this is the way of doing it, right? So that's the easy way of doing this. Now, if you want a fabric looking undersuit, that's fine, right? But what if you don't? What if you want a leather look to it, right? Now, what you could do is you could go and mess about with the roughness textures and make that a bit more shiny, and then it looks a little bit more leather-like. But I don't particularly like the look of that. It just looks a little bit, it's still got that fabric look to it. It's more like a shiny fabric rather than a leather material, right? So, this is what I think is the best way of doing it, right? Now follow along because it does get a bit complex, but if you play along with, I'll go slowly, if you play along as I'm doing it, then it should be fine. Right, first things first, go and add a fill layer. Then what you need to do, go into properties and get rid of everything except every single material channel except for height, right? You want height, keep it there. Set the height to something above or below 0. So let's say 0.16, right? Go back to layers, right click, black mask, go to this little one which is add effect, and then go to add fill. Then go to properties, click grayscale, and then type in gradient, and then go to this one which is gradient linear 2, right? Then go back to your layers, go back, click the mask again, go back to add effect and add filter. Go to properties, filter and blur, right? Now, what you do is you go to gradient linear 2, back onto the fill layer, and set the tile into something, again, like we did with the other one, set it to something wacky like, let's say 100, and automatically you can see that this effect is already showing up, right? So that seems a little bit too thick for me, so let's go 200. There you go, that looks a little bit better. And it looks a little bit too smooth. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the blur effect and set this at, say, 0.22. Right, it's a little bit more sharper now. Automatically, you can see that we've got that effect already there. Right, we still got the same problem that we had with the scarf wool material, right, with certain parts pointed in the wrong directions. But it's fine, we'll deal with that later. Right? So, because what the good thing about this is if we go to properties, instead of going and changing the rotation in the UV transformations, there's actually a rotation drop down to go from 0 to 90, which is actually pretty nice. Right, so as you can see there, it's already in its own nice position. That is literally all there is to it. The reason why I say that you can get lost is the one thing that I always do whenever I'm doing this on my own is instead of going fill layer, is go add layer. So add a blank layer, like this one down here, or like this one I've just made up here, right? If you add a blank layer, it doesn't work. Don't ask me why, I haven't got a clue. It just doesn't work, right? So you need to add a fill layer, right? But the good thing about this is that now that we've got this fill layer, this effect, it's just a blank effect, right? So now what's good about this is what you can do is if you want to add another smart material on top, so let's say you want to add a fabric layer on top, let's say we go fabric burlap, it needs to be below, so make sure whatever happens that this material, that this effect stays on top of whatever you're making, as otherwise you won't be able to see it, right? And let's go fabric burlap, let's get rid of some of this effect that we don't particularly want, let's get rid of the, get rid of that pattern, there we go, change the base color down to like a black looking thing, make it a little bit more shiny, not too much because it still want to resemble a fabric, and there you go. So now you've got a fabric looking material which you can completely customize if you wish to. But what happens if you don't want a fabric? What happens if you want it to be leather? What you can do is if we get rid of the fabric burlap and then we go, let's say leather, and we go, let's say leather creased, and then we go drop down, get rid of any effects that we don't want, and then go base color. It's already quite a blacky sort of color, but let's just go a bit more of a prominent black, and it's as simple as that. Exactly the same, no change in the effect whatsoever. You're just changing the material that's underneath it, and automatically the possibilities that you can do with this are completely up to your imagination, right? Now what's good about this is that you could just customize it endlessly, right? If you want, let's say, a bit more roundness to your curves, right, you can go into the blurb, let's say 0.3, looks a bit more curved, right? If you want a bit more sharper, change down 0.1, it's a bit more sharp, right? If you want, let's say, the gaps in between the layers to be a bit greater, you turn the balance up or down. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. It's so customizable, this effect, and that's why I love it so much. The way that we did the masking, also with getting, let's say, like this to point in the same direction, works the exact same way as we did with the Scarfall. So let's just do that again, just so I will show you. Now the only way that this is different is that because you can't mask a mask, right? What you need to do is you need to add it into a folder. Right, so if I Control-C, Control-V to duplicate this, add a folder, add two folders, and add this one into this folder, and then add this one into this folder, what you can then do is you can actually mask the folders out. Right, so if I get rid of this one, and then right-click and black mask the folder, you can see it's gone completely. But what I can do is I can add a mask to that folder. Right, so what I can now do is if I get rid of this leather crease so you can see the ambient occlusion again. Right, so these are pointing in this direction. So let's have these point down the other way. So let's get rid of that. Go into my gradient linear and change it from 90 to 0, so it's now pointing downwards. Then what we can do, go into the mask and do this. So cover it up like this, so it's now facing downwards. Right, do the same on this arm, just like this. There we go, like that. And then what we can do is you can do the same thing all along the legs, right? Just like this, right? And just like magic, it's absolutely perfect, right? Well, I say perfect, but not perfect, but good enough. And like I say, you can tweak it and tinker with it, put the leather material back on, and it looks... It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but the effect works well, right? Do you get what I'm saying? So that is literally how you do it. And I know it's not a very difficult thing to do, but it's not the easiest combination to figure out on your own, because to me, the way this works just doesn't really make any sense to me. Now, what you can also do is, if you want a bit more depth to another thing you do to add a bit more depth into your waves a bit, is if you go back to properties, you can actually increase or decrease the height values a little bit, right? Yeah, I think this is this one, right? So you can increase and decrease the height values to give your waves a little more prominence, right? I'm going to stick it to 0.16, because I think that's the one that looks the best. But you can do it with it as you like, right? And that is literally all there is to it, right? That's what we've got, and that's what we're ending on. Now, like I said, the way I've got it in my renders, I've had to tweak it quite a bit. And I'll put screenshots, well, renders on the screen now of 3 different variations that I've done. right? There's no one that's the same. I've added a little different effects here and there, thinking this is going to look good or this looks better. I don't want it to look a bit more fabric-like. I don't want it to look a little bit more leather-like. It just depends on what your feel is, right? But also, what's even better about this is it doesn't just work for undersuits, right? So let's say, for example, let's copy this mask and we want to go onto, let's say, the chest plate, for example. So what one's that one? It's this one. Go to this chest plate and let's add a steel material, let's say. Add that one. And then go back into the base color, turn the metallic down, and turn the roughness up a little bit and change the color to a bit more of a whitey color, right? So now what we can do is if I add this on top, now obviously, the way it's set now, if you like this effect, fine, no bother at all, but that might not work, doesn't work for me that well. So what you can do is if you add a folder, and then drag this into the folder, and mask out that folder, what you can then do is you can then put this effect in exactly where you want it. Right, now that's how you mask a mask. You put it into a folder and mask out the folder. Wait, so let's say it's got a generator on it, let's say. So let's say you want an edgeware generator, but you only want it in certain parts of your model. Because you can't mask out a mask from a generator, just put it in a folder. Right, so let's just do this. So let me just prove this to you while I'm talking about it. So if I go fill, let's make it black, see as my model's white. And I go black mask, not add paint, add generator, properties, and then let's go metal edgeware, right? Oh, hang on a second, I haven't baked my curvature. There you go, right, curvature's baked. So if you're not aware, curvature is how Substance Painter identifies what to do with like metal edgeware and generators and that, right? So got on metal edgeware, right? But let's say you only want it just on this little middle bit here, right? Now, obviously, you can't mask a generator, right? It's not going to work, right? Because it's already got mask details in it. But if you add it into a folder, put that into a folder and mask that off, you can now go on and paint as you wish, right? I didn't know that until just recently, as of setting up for this video, and I'm thinking, hang on a minute, that's how you mask out generators. You just put it into a folder, mask out the folder. It's a really cool tidbit, and it's one that I will use in the future when I don't want metal edgeware in all the places. So there's all sorts of things that you can do with these little effects, right? And like I said, it's something that my goal for doing these tutorials is to show you things that I couldn't find out how to do. I've had to learn myself, right? Because the one thing that I really struggle with when learning Substance Painter is YouTube is, for the best part, bloody useless, right? For me especially. Because I learn from doing little 10, 15, 20 minute videos where I get to follow along and whatnot, right? It's a bit like Unreal Engine, right? Unreal Engine has got a lot of good resources, but they're like an hour or two long from like an Unreal conference or something. That's useless for me because I'm not going to sit through 2 hours of just watching somebody ramble about what I'm supposed to be doing. I want to be showed this is exactly how you do it. Right, and that's what my goal is with doing these tutorials. No speed paints, no doing it quickly, so you've got to try and watch bit by bit and see if you can try and find out what's happening. No, this is how you do it, step by step by step, and this is the end result, and this is what you can do with it. Right, it's simple and incontestable as that. Right, so after that little bit of a mini rant, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy, don't forget to smash that like button and hit that subscribe button for more awesome different type of content, whatever seems to boat my float. Again, if there's anything else that you think is worth me doing a tutorial about that you've seen in my renders, do let me know, because if you are struggling with anything, I would love to make a video to show you how to do it properly and see what you're creating. So that's all about all I have time for today. Another separate quick reminder, if you do want me to texture you something in Substance Painter, my commissions are now open on my Ko-Fi page. So if you, let's say, want one of my models that I've already got up on the store, let's say the Clone Trooper or the Stormtrooper, or even a retexture of Commander Cody or something, the Commander Cody arm or something, ping it in the commissions and I'll get that texture for you to use in Blender, Unreal Engine, Unity, whatever. Right? I have 3 slots open by default just so I can ease into it and don't get myself overwhelmed. But if I get through them a bit more quicker, then I might open up for a few more slots. So, hope you guys have enjoyed. I shall see you all later. Bye!